we are starting the process of putting together the 2017 summer edition of Dave Campbell's Texas Football, the 58th annual edition of the Bible of Texas Football. And one of the things we have to do is we have to predict every college football game. It's what we do because the only way to make sure all the records add up is to predict every game. Yeah. And it stinks, and it's a long process, and it's I'm going to spend probably all weekend doing it.
Right.
But we will, we'll be able to do that. And I get a lot of questions all the time. How do you project college, the college football teams? And look, there's no science, there's no real scientific answer of A plus B, minus C equals the number of wins. But there are clues.
Sure.
And one of the things we factor in heavily is the number of returning starters that you have. Specifically, if you have a quarterback, or you have between more than four or more of your offensive line coming back, you are likely to be better than you were last year. Now, that's not always the case, but it generally tends to hold true. And Phil Steele, I got asked the other day if Phil Steele is like a competitor of ours, and I mean theoretically he is.
I suppose, but I think most fans and most readers probably look at us companion material.
I think that's
right?
exactly. I think people get both. Yeah, I get both. I have Dave Campbell's Texas Football, and I have Phil Steele. Phil Steele, I think, is a lot better at the national big picture stuff, and we go a little bit more in depth.
Yeah, I want in depth on my Texas teams. There's only one magazine.
Got nothing bad to say about Phil Steele.
Not
and
a thing.
his website. I'm going to rephrase that. I've got one bad thing to say about Phil Steele. His website's a bit of a mess.
Yeah, it's not great, but it's about the magazine.
It is about the magazine. And one thing he does on his website is he has the complete breakdown of every team in the nation's returning starters. And he talks about how last year you shouldn't discount the importance of returning starters, even though the last year's finalists had among the fewest returning starters in the nation. Alabama and Clemson had 11 and 12 starters returning. But that is an exception as opposed to the rule. For instance, last year, I'm reading directly from philsteele.com. For instance, last year there were 19 teams that returned 16 or more starters, including their quarterback. Of those 19 teams, 12 had a better record in 2016 than they did in 2015. 4 had the same record, and only 3 had a weaker record. Okay? That seems to be pretty compelling evidence. On the other side, there were 14 teams that had 11 or fewer starters and did not have their quarterback back. None of them had a better record, and 13 had a weaker record.
Interesting.
It's an interesting. So these can tell us things. It's not scientific. It's not across the board, but it can give us a clue. Max, do you know which team in Texas will enter the 2017 season with the most returning starters?
The Texas Longhorns.
The Texas Longhorns.
Nice, I got it. All right.
Who else? They're tied. They have 17. Texas has 17 starters returning, 10 on defense, and 7 on offense, including their quarterback, plus their quarterback.
I'm going to guess it is either SMU or North Texas.
The TCU Horned Frogs.
No kidding.
TCU is bringing back 10 starters offensively.
I guess that's true. Yeah.
In fact, they're bringing back their entire offense. They're bringing back 10 starters plus their quarterback. Is the way he breaks it down. And so they're bringing back 17 starters plus 7 on the defense. TCU, if you believe in the metrics that came from this past year, TCU and Texas both have more than 16 starters, both have their quarterback coming back. Next on the list is Rice, who has 8 and 8, although they are losing their quarterback. Houston brings back 15 starters, 8 on offense, 7 on defense. Texas Tech brings back 8 on offense, 6 on defense. There's a lot. What I looked at this. There are only 2 teams that bring back fewer than 12 starters offensively, or from last year. UTEP brings back 5 starters plus their or 5 offensive starters plus their quarterback, so they bring back 12 actually. Actually, they both bring back 12. Every team in the state, I forgot that he separated quarterback and offense. Every team in the state is bringing back at least half of their starters, more than half of their starters from last year. It's interesting, right?
Yeah.
Of them, we do have 6 returning starting quarterbacks. Texas brings back Shane Buechele. TCU brings back Kenny Hill. SMU brings back Ben Hicks. UTSA is bringing back Blake Bogenschutz.
Right.
UTEP is bringing back Ryan Metz or whoever they end up turning to.
Bogenschutz?
Who was?
It's not Bogenschutz. It's
oh yeah, the
14.
14. You know his number.
I know his number, but I don't know his name.
Let me see. Hold on.
It's not Bogenschutz.
Sturm. Dalton Sturm.
Yeah, Dalton Sturm.
You're
There
right.
we
I'm
go.
sorry. Dalton Sturm came on late.
Bogenschutz retired.
Yes, that's right. I don't know why. I'm a year behind on that.
It's okay. Mason Fine.
And North Texas brings back Mason Fine. So, 6 teams are bringing back their starters offensively, or their quarterbacks offensively. From a defensive perspective, Texas is lapping the field. They have 10 starters back, but only 2 teams, North Texas and SMU, bring back fewer than half their starters. Okay? The interesting thing for me is going to be that I feel like a lot of the strengths we're going to see a lot of the strengths on display. For example, Texas Tech, offensive juggernaut, right? They do lose their quarterback, but they have 8 starters returning.
Right. And a quarterback who played significant time last
Exactly
season.
right. Exactly right. SMU's the same way. SMU, offensive guru and Chad Morris, 9 starters and their quarterback back.
Yep.
Okay? On the other side, TCU. TCU brings back 7 defensively. That's going to be pretty good. When Rice has been good, they've had great defenses. They bring back 8 defensively. I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see that. A&M is the team we haven't mentioned. They bring back 5 on offense and 7 on defense without their quarterback. They are probably, from a starter perspective, the team with the biggest question marks.
Yeah, I was about to say the 2 teams you haven't talked about so far, which isn't great, is A&M and UTEP.
UTEP brings back 5 and 6, or 5 offensive starters plus a quarterback, and then 6 defensively. Baylor brings back 7 and 7, but there is so much change there that we don't.
It's such a reset that we
they're going to be really hard. I will tell you that of the teams in the state,
toughest to call.
I think they're the toughest team to project.
Yeah,
I think Baylor's, because there's so many moving parts.
A&M will be tough too.
A&M will be tough too.
and Baylor will be the 2 toughest to figure
because they've got so many. They're going to rely on a lot of youngsters to fill in major roles.
Yep.
So that's a look at it. I'll try to write up a little post on TexasFootball.com about returning starters across the state. It's interesting to me that we do have half the teams that do return their quarterback.
Yeah.
And when we go and we do, I think what's interesting, what's going to be really fun, is when you start thinking about this, I want to ask you right now.
Okay.
Who is the best quarterback in Texas?
I know this is tough.
Right?
This is tough.
So there are 6 there so we're probably not. So when you talk about, we do our all Texas college team.
Yeah.
We do our all Texas college team, and so we have the best at each position. So we're probably, spoiler alert, we're probably not giving it to a guy who didn't start last year.
Right.
We need to have that sort of data point for us. So here are your choices.
Right.
Okay? You can go with Shane Buechele. Fine. He was fine.
It's an upside play.
It's a
You're
freshman.
expecting him to get better.
You can go with Kenny Hill.
Right.
Who was
That's a
occasionally
gamble.
brilliant and occasionally just
and shown us enough
baffling.
at this point that there's no reason to think this year will be that much different.
You can go with Ben Hicks.
Right. Again,
Okay.
Upside play.
Upside play. You can go with Dalton Sturm.
Right.
UTSA.
Low ceiling.
Mm-hmm. You can go with Ryan Metz at UTEP.
Right.
If you want to go with we don't really know who it's going to be. It's probably Ryan Metz, but it could be Zach Greenlee.
Yep.
It could be Kavika Johnson.
Right.
It could be any number of guys, or you can go with Mason Fine.
Again, upside.
Those are your options as far as returning starters are concerned. So that's going to be a tough call.
I don't know who the best one is, but I guess if I had to pick one to go with, I'd probably say Buechele. And the funny thing about that is the way they're creating that situation, especially if they end up getting Harris, right, from LSU, Brandon Harris. If they end up getting him, there's a decent chance Buechele will never play this year.
Right.
So, but I guess that's tough.
I mean,
it's going to be a weird year for quarterbacks.
It's going to be It's a weird year for quarterbacks, but the door is open, I will say, for a lot of different guys on these new teams to step forward and say, I'm the guy. Is it Zach Smith at Baylor?
Is it Kellen Mond?
Is it Kellen Mond at A&M?
Yeah. I mean, there's part of me sitting here like, if you really want to dream on a new face in a new place, that might be the one.
Is it who's the? I always forget who Houston just picked up.
It could be Kyle Allen.
Could be Kyle Allen.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. We don't know enough about that offense.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's very, very interesting to me what this team, what the quarterback situation in Texas is going to look like. It'll be fun. It's a fun time of year.